Found us. We're here. We weren't lurking. We were just waiting on some technical things. I think I plugged in right here. Yeah, I'm plugged in right. Uh, wow, what a morning, you know, because I'm on the West Coast. I get to hear the Trump hearings right when I wake up. I was up a little before, but 7 o'clock there it was. Boom. Here's the Trump lawyer making his case on the 14th Amendment about how Trump uh, should be on the Colorado ballot and that the Colorado Supreme Court was wrong. The 14th Amendment is wrong, even though in plain as day there it was 14th Amendment. Pretty clear. Here's an officer. Oh, it's not a president. Oh, here's an insurrection. Oh, it's not an insurrection. It's more like a riot. No, it's plain. They meant the president of the United States. They meant everyone who could possibly rise to be president. Oh, is it a matter of a person can't hold the office, but he can run for the office? Oh, my goodness. Now you know why people hate lawyers, right? I mean, that really is it. I mean, I'm not going to analyze it like the lawyers would, the lawyers on all the newscasts, because you don't have to be a lawyer, right? The most important person in the courtroom is a member of the jury who's just like a regular person. It's like you and me. It's not a person with a law degree, but that's not the way it usually works. That's why I'm going to talk about the Trump thing from the perspective of my father, because today would have been his special day. This Willie Guillermo would have been 119 today if he lived, if he'd gone vegan before there was a vegan term. But if he just cut down on the pork a little bit, he'd still be alive today. You kidding me? 119? Okay, maybe not. But I'm just saying, I'm looking at all these things, all the past Trump things, today's SCOTUS hearing, and I'm looking at the immunity ruling by the circuit court or the appellate court, the DC appellate court. I'm looking at all that today through my father's lens, because that's democracy. And today's his birthday, and I'll go into some other things why I'm thinking about my dad. I'm also going to talk about the case that everyone's talking about now. Robert Hur, he's the special prosecutor who was looking into Joe Biden's document hoarding in the garage with his locked up Corvette or whatever. It's not so good. It's not so good, but it's still, we're in this realm now where everyone is going to believe their thing, and it's going to be hard to get at the truth and to get at that compromised position. Well, I think that's what we saw in the SCOTUS hearing today, when you saw the two of the liberal justices wasn't as definitive about Sotomayor's position, but I wouldn't have seen her as, being necessarily pro-Trump, but I did see Justices Elena Kagan and Ketanji Brown Jackson in their questions seeming to be, I guess the best word is skeptical about Colorado's finding that Trump should be off the ballot because of the 14th Amendment. And mostly because of practical terms, that the 14th Amendment, well, okay, you say he's off of Colorado, but is that going to hurt all the other states? Or are you going to make all the other states sue to figure out who's qualified, who's not qualified? I mean, it just didn't seem good to me as I was watching it. And so I'm going to talk about it in terms of my father today, because I'm going to try to honor him. Let's see, what else are we going to talk about? Talk about the Hur bit, Hur and Biden. We're going to talk more about the Shine Challenge and all the stuff that I'm doing coming up in my performance life. But now let's go to my column, which I wrote for the ALDEF blog, aaldef.org/blog, the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund. And I call it Citizen Willie versus Citizen Trump because, well, there's Citizen Trump. No man is above the law, right? And my dad, Citizen Willie, today, as I said, my father, Willie Guillermo, born under the American flag in the colonial America that was the Philippines. I mean, a lot of people don't realize that. But yeah, when you fight a war to take over the Philippines and you are now the imperial owner of the Philippines, the U.S. colonized the Philippines. They won that war in 1902, the American-Philippine War, or AKA the Philippine Insurrection. You want to talk about insurrectionists? I think those were the good insurrectionists because they were fighting for the people of the Philippines against the imperialists, right? If America became the imperial ruler in 1902, my father was born in the Philippines in 1905 under the American flag. Today would have been his birthday. He would have been 119. And frankly, he would be thriving had he stopped eating pork at a reasonable age and gone vegan. I know no one knew what vegan was back then. And if you think vegan, vegetarian, if those folks are considered weirdos today, imagine like in the 60s or 70s or 80s. So, of course, I'm thinking about my father today, right? One of the first Filipinos to come to America in the 1920s and 30s. I was thinking about him as I pondered all of the Trump legal developments of this week. I mean, and consider the odd coincidences. My father actually died on the day of Trump's birthday, right? Trump was born June 14th. That's the day my father died. So I'm curious. I mean, all right, this is kind of in the realm of astrology and well, no, it's just coincidence. But if you're sensitive to all these things, you say, wow, this kind of coincidence, is it really? So my father actually died on the day of Trump's birthday. Would Trump's political life die at a Supreme Court hearing on my father's birthday? I'm wondering about that today. And of course, this week started with the appellate court ruling affirming the circuit court's finding that Trump is not immune absolutely from criminal prosecution for the events of January 6th. And then we have today's Supreme Court hearing on whether Trump should be kicked off the Colorado ballot on the 14th Amendment, Section 3, on that basis, that bars insurrection participants from being officers of the United States. Now, if you look at Section 3 and the 14th Amendment, I know I love the First Amendment, not so crazy about the second one, but the First Amendment is great. It's first for a reason. The 14th, it does some heavy lifting. It does equal protection under the law. It does birthright citizenship. It does, who would have known that it also had this provision, Section 3? And the language is, no person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of president and vice president. Now, elector, like a member of the electoral college. So not president or vice president, but the elector of. So, a little hole there that someone can say, hey, this is what they mean. Nor can they hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state who, having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States, Funny, officer. What does it mean, officer? Is that like the president? No, why didn't they say president? Another hole that someone can like tap, 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 try to bust this paragraph. Officer, why didn't they say public official? Or as a member of any state legislature, or as an executive or judicial officer of any state. Support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. So there's this long list of people that they qualify. They don't really define, but they say, hey, if you support the Constitution of the United States, you can't engage in insurrection or rebellion against the same. So you have all these definition issues. Who are these people? All right, that's why, who's an officer of the United States? Why is that important? That because you got to define it. What's an insurrection or rebellion? And today, the Trump people, Trump lawyer, Jonathan Mitchell said, well, officer, we mean any appointed, an appointed, but not an elected, which is what? No, it means an elective. You're talking about a member of Congress. You know, they're elected. So an officer of the United States only means appointed officials. See, when he said that, he lost me. But if you're for trying to get rid of this thing, you're thinking, oh, yeah, that's a way out. It means appointed, not elected. It means the president of the United States isn't covered under this. And then they got into the insurrection idea. And Jonathan Mitchell said, oh, insurrection. Oh, you know, no, this wasn't an insurrection. It was a riot. It was violent. It was bad. It wasn't an insurrection. It wasn't organized. Oh boy. You know, I mean, this is how people argue. And then there's this last line. But Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such disability. So I think reading this myself, I'm thinking not non-lawyer type, plain English, plain American. Trump would be covered by this, by that provision that I just read, for what he did on January 6, 2021, urging his followers to fight like hell, right? Even the Trump lawyer, Mitchell, admitted that it was a violent riot. It was violent. It wasn't an insurrection. It was violent, he said. And then there's that last line, that Congress may somehow, you know, be the final arbiter. And this is why a lot of analysts said, oh, the court's looking for an off-ramp. This is their convenient off-ramp, that last line of the document. Because that off-ramp, known as Congress, aka the House of Chaos, you've seen what they have tried to do and couldn't do this week. So here's the thing about my dad, because I'm looking at this also through my dad's eyes. My dad came here in the late 20s, 30s. He was a betting man. You know how some people say, well, if I were a betting man. My father definitely was a betting man. He preferred horses. But if he were living today, I'd switch him from that wretched, cruel sport to betting on SCOTUS decisions. It's just as unpredictable. And you might get a long shot. But I think, here's the thing. If he were listening in celestially to the hearing and handicapping the outcome, you know his ears would have perked when he heard pricked, perked, pricked. His ears would have pricked when he heard the more liberal justices like Elena Kagan question whether an individual state could rule, like kick Trump off the ballot and impact all the others. Brings to the mind the issue, would that be fair or even democratic? And then my dad would wonder why his favorite justice of all. I mean, I know my dad would have loved Ketanji Brown Jackson. why wasn't she getting into the merits of the insurrection itself? Filipinos, I mean, that's their expertise. We know insurrection. Filipinos were the original insurrectionists, revolutionaries fighting against the U.S. imperial forces in 1899. I like to think that Filipinos can tell the good insurrectionists from the bad. So, no one brought it up. I mean, why wasn't there more discussion about the mob violence aided by guns and impromptu weapons like flagpoles to thwart the Capitol Police, enter the Capitol itself, and terrorize our elected officials? Just didn't come up as relevant. So the court is like making sure what they're deciding on is this little hole that they all can stand on. And if there's a hole, a little island that is small enough but big enough to hold all 9 of the justices, maybe they have a unanimous decision to throw out the Colorado court argument. Because if you look at it broadly, you'd have to say, wait a minute, what the heck are you talking about? Are you guys really looking for an off-ramp? And the off-ramp is this little tiny thing? So, Judge Jackson, I'm sure my father would have been dismayed. She said it sounded to her like perhaps the 14th Amendment, Section 3, wasn't intended as a broad catch-all for all time, but that its original intent was limited to preventing Confederates of the South from rising again, and that was that. And if that was that, then that was that. And then you could say, well, Colorado has no relevance then. I mean, it's not the same thing. They weren't talking about. Kagan and Jackson seemed to join the mostly conservative justices who questioned if it should even be the court's role, right, to decide, but rather Congress. So given the tone of the hearing, I bet, my dad would bet, that the Colorado Supreme Court's decision would be overturned. I don't like that myself, as the language in the 14th Amendment seems clear to me. And I wouldn't exactly consider myself an originalist. But going this way on the Colorado case, to throw it out, allows the court to also reject the Trump immunity case, which I think the Trump folks are gonna try. But if they do, I think SCOTUS will see it rejected because it was argued by the circuit court, and a lot of legal scholars, legal analysts seem to think it's solid footing, airtight. But it also allows SCOTUS to have that Solomonic shine of fairness, which is what all good courts want in the end, to show that they are fair, even though they are filled with biased conservatives and conservatives who are on the take. Unfortunately, that's true. In the cases of Alito and Thomas, bought and paid for, unfortunately. So that's the SCOTUS case. As for the immunity case, the ruling by the D.C. Court of Appeals that rejected Trump's claim of absolute immunity for criminal actions committed while president, I know my father would agree with the appellate decision wholeheartedly, because it ruled that any executive immunity that may have prosecuted him while he served as president no longer protects him against this prosecution. Yeah, he's out of office. Hooray, my dad would say with his Ilocano accent. And he would have thanked Judge Pan's questioning Trump's lawyer last month about the hypothetical SEAL Team 6 killing that made it clear that immunity for Trump would have been his license to kill our democracy. Right? It would have been a license for dictatorship. So my dad would be glad that Trump does not have immunity, but he'd be on the moon with this statement by the court. Today we affirm the denial, the appellate judges wrote. For the purpose of this criminal case, former President Trump has become Citizen Trump with all of the defenses of any other criminal defendant. And the key word there is citizen. And my dad, he knows the rights of citizens are not insignificant. He knows this because for so many years, he was denied that right. He was non-citizen Willie from the day he entered the country in 1928 because he was considered a colonized American, an American national. He couldn't own land. He couldn't vote. He couldn't intermarry. He had no rights until after World War II. And that's when he became Citizen Willie, who loved America, who never missed an election, never missed a chance to vote. Citizen Willie. So to hear the phrase Citizen Trump, I'm sure my father felt how equal he was. Because let's face it, Citizen Trump, he'll have more rights than he needs. He will. I also know that though my dad would probably bet Trump prevails on the Colorado ballot issue, he'd be disappointed in the high court. I mean, he'd have his doubts about a court so willing to take away abortion rights, so willing to take away voting rights from women and people of color, and yet so willing to uphold the rights of a person he'd consider a bad insurrectionist. And that's how Citizen Willie would feel. And I know because today's his birthday. You know, so many things that my father went through in the 1920s and 30s. It's funny, it's all coming back. It seems to all be coming back now. And that's how far the pendulum swings. I mean, it's not from the 60s, like 65 to now. It's going all the way back. It's not from 45 to now. It's going all the way back to not 35 to now. You can go back to 1924. That's when we had the kind of xenophobic immigration law. The immigration law of 1924 put quotas on everyone, even Europe. I mean, this is why we didn't have an Asian America in large numbers, because there was an invisible wall that those quotas, those immoral, really, well, they weren't illegal because they were put into effect. So they were legal, illegal quotas. Kept down the Asian American community until 1965, when the 65 Immigration Act lifted all those racist quotas. So anyway, that's my view of things. And, you know, the disappointing thing is that it wasn't really, it's not going to end up the top story of the day, because Trump is raising money off this. He is also, this is a victory for him if he gets put on the ballot in Colorado, because the Supreme Court there is deemed in error by the Supreme Court of the United States. Victory for Trump. But the big victory, or the big news of the day, really is the special counsel report. And not necessarily because of what it does about investigating into President Biden's handling of classified documents, but it's all the things that it says about Biden and his memory and his ability to recall. I mean, that's kind of the scary thing about Robert Hur, Asian American guy from New York. I mean, we talked about him when he was named last year as the special counsel. We called him our AAPI Person of the Hour. Merrick Garland appointed him to investigate the handling of the classified documents. Remember, Biden had some classified documents in his home and in a former office. Hur's a sharp guy, born to South Korean immigrants in New York. He's 49 years old, went to Harvard College and Stanford Law. He clerked for former Supreme Court Chief Justice William Rehnquist, a smart conservative who is, I think you could say he was not biased, but he did hand, with his special report, a lot more to the Trump team than to the Biden team. This is what Hur said a few months back. He said this in January of a year ago. A year ago, he said, "I will conduct the assigned investigation with fair, impartial, and dispassionate judgment. I intend to follow the facts swiftly and thoroughly without fear or favor and will honor the trust placed in me to perform the service." And I think for the most part, he has. Number one, he says no charges will be brought up against Joe Biden. I think that's important. But what is not helpful to Joe Biden is that the report does reveal some things about Biden's memory that could be used by the Trump team to really accentuate the age and the fitness issue that the Trump team is mentioning almost at every turn. So the report said that, quote, Biden's memory also appeared to have significant limitations, citing Hur's interview with the special counsel's office, or citing Biden's interview with the special counsel's office and recorded conversations with his ghostwriter. Now that's kind of scary that Biden shared some of this information, top secret information, with a ghostwriter. Also, the report says Biden did not remember, even within several years, when his son, Beau, died. I don't know. I mean, I could see, precisely what year. Another one. We have also considered that at trial, Mr. Biden would likely present himself to a jury, as he did during our interview of him, as a sympathetic, well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. All right, so that's not great. If it's true, Biden's personal counsel refuted the characterizations in a letter to Hur, which was included in the report. We do not believe that the report's treatment of President Biden's memory is accurate or appropriate. The report uses highly prejudicial language to describe a commonplace occurrence among witnesses, a lack of recall of years-old events. And frankly, I think that's true. I mean, Hur tried to do the right thing by saying, okay, I'm not going to go after Biden. I'm not going to press charges. But, oh, by the way, yeah, he has a lousy memory. Couldn't remember the, X, Y, and Z, kind of passive aggressive kind of thing. And as the Biden attorneys say, not true. So what Biden said is, I cooperated completely, threw up no roadblocks, and sought no delays. In fact, I was so determined to give the special counsel what they needed that I went forward with 5 hours of in-person interviews over 2 days on October 8th and 9th of last year, even though Israel had just been attacked on October 7th, and I was in the middle of handling an international crisis. I just believe that's what I owe the American people, as I could know no charges would be brought and the matter closed. And this is Joe Biden talking. So interesting. I don't know if it matters because, look, let's face it. If you are a pro-Biden supporter, you say, we'll handle it. And if you're not a pro-Biden supporter, you say, see, Donald Trump has been systematically, or you're seeing the selective enforcement of laws are going after, they're treating Trump different from Biden, not just in this case, but in all the other cases. And so this is going to be a campaign issue. This is going to feed the Trump campaign. And we're going to have to cross our fingers if you're a Biden supporter and hope that it doesn't hurt Joe Biden. And if it does, maybe or will we see the emergence of another player? I know. Gavin Newsom? I don't know. All right, so yeah, my dad was a Democrat, but I don't know, he was also a Philippine nationalist at heart, which is funny because he did not go back to the Philippines. But I wonder what he would have thought about the fight between Duterte and Marcos now. I know my dad was pro-Marcos. This is the contradiction. He was so pro-Marcos. Ferdinand the father, senior. He was pro-dictator. It doesn't make sense, right? But he was pro-dictator, and he was, because the dictator was from his province. That's like saying, oh, I love Donald Trump because I live around the corner from Mar-a-Lago. He's my neighbor. It's that kind of thing. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. We're all in our silos, and everyone in their respective silo got a little something to supercharge whatever information they're putting out. Because I just think there's no, the only thing that has appeared in the last week or so is if Trump were convicted, then people would switch over. That seems to be a powerful thing. That if Trump gets convicted, finally, some Republicans would say, hey, that's it. I'm switching over. And some polls have indicated that that's where the most change would occur if Trump would go to trial and if he were convicted. And guess what? Because of the immunity case, Trump doesn't have immunity. The likelihood of Trump going to trial is greater. And the likelihood of him losing and being convicted is greater. And wouldn't you know that Trump has until Monday to appeal that immunity decision to the Supreme Court, and analysts all over are saying You know, I don't think they want to hear that case. Not if it looks like they're going to go and reject the Colorado Supreme Court case and say Trump belongs on that ballot. So, more intrigue. More intrigue. I just know my dad, if he were alive, he would be torn. I think being a Fox News dad, he'd watch Fox News because I think part of him would like Trump if he sees Trump as a kind of Duterte type. But he's tried and true Union Democrat. That's why it's important that, you know, who's the UAW for? Who is the SEIU for? He'd be influenced by that. Anyway, today's his birthday. I remember my dad. He loved to gamble. He was not against hard work, but he was pro windfall. My dad was pro, gambling. He'd take a flyer, $2 on it. All right, make it $5. Let it ride. He was a gambler because the biggest gamble in his life was coming to America, and it was not good. I mean, not from the 20s and the 30s and the 40s. He was a man who came here, single man, couldn't find a woman to marry because of the law, not because he was unable to, not because the dating apps rejected him. Emil, there were no dating apps. Quit being anachronistic. Of course. I'm just saying there were forces working against him. And he hung in there. And he had a family. He found a Filipino woman. They started a family. They had me. The fulfillment of his American dream. How about that? Yeah, I do think he died when he was in his 70s. I think he could have lasted till at least his 90s if he were a little more conscious about diet, health. But there wasn't even there were vegetarians in that day, but he needed hearty veganism, hearty no oil veganism to overtake all the different maladies he had health wise. But he just missed out on a lot. Like he didn't go to war. That's not why he became a citizen or how he became a citizen. I mean, he became a citizen by a different order that allowed for Filipino Americans who were here to become citizens of a certain age. And he was proud of it. And for the longest time, this is not something that was afforded to all Filipinos. But because my mother came in the 40s and she stayed an alien. She stayed a registered alien, green card holder. She did not want to renounce the Philippines. My father said, "Where do I sign?" And no one let him sign anywhere until like after the war. But he knew the importance of voting. He knew the importance of all these things. He would have been watching. He would have cared. At least after he visited the racetrack, of course. Okay. Hey, thanks for joining me. I'm going to be doing a bunch of things online and also on stage. I'll be in something called the Shine Challenge. Now, if you don't know about the Shine Challenge, Langston Hughes heard these toasts that people were saying on the streets of New York, and he wrote about these toasts. And, a couple of small uh, bits of writing talking about Shine, a man who had become a kind of folk hero, a legend for surviving the Titanic. What? Was there a black man on the Titanic? Yeah. Now, Ishmael Reed, who is a playwright, a poet, a novelist, an essayist, a friend of mine, he put together what he calls the Shine Challenge 2024, where he writes about Shine, puts it in a theatrical piece, explains what it means, and we're doing a special reading. It's going to be presented by the Nuyorican Poets Cafe and available online. So go to nuyorican.org, get tickets, Shine Challenge 2024. And it'll be available starting, I think, February 26th. Go to nuyorican.org. That's Nuyorican, Nuyorican. I'm also going to be at the Fresno Fringe, or the Rogue Festival, and that's on, I have to make sure I get the right dates. The Rogue Festival is March 2nd, 2 p.m., March 2nd, 9:30 p.m., and March 3rd at 2 p.m. And if I'm awake and survived it all by March 3rd at 6 p.m., that will be a great thing. But really, March 2nd, 2 p.m., March 2nd, 9:30 p.m., I go to sleep, quick turnaround, 2 p.m. March 3rd. Then back March 7th, 5:30 p.m., and then March 9th, Saturday, March 9th, 5 p.m. That's at the Rogue Festival, Fresno Rogue Festival. Go to roguefestival.org. It's also on, that's where you get tickets, roguefestival.org. Lotus Room, that's where I'm going to be. And also the New York City Fringe, April 5th, 8th, 13th, 19th, and 21st at Under St. Mark's. I'll get you the exact dates and where you can get tickets starting next week. Orlando in May at the Fringe Festival. And I'll have specific dates in a bit, but it's going to be busy. I'll be doing my show, Emil, Amok, Lost NPR host, Wiley Filipino, vegan trans dad. What? Got to see it. You got to see it. Okay, we're going to close out the show now. Hey, thanks for coming to be part of this First Amendment right. Check out my column again, ALDEF, aaldef.org/blog. It's on my dad. Let's see. Trying to go to it. Can I go to it? Yeah, on my computer. Oh yeah. Hey, and there's a really nice picture of me and my dad together. And it's a little blurry, but it's an old photo. Citizen Willie versus Citizen Trump. Okay, we like to close with a little loving kindness, just to ground ourselves, right? Loving kindness, it always tends to ground ourselves. And so, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here. Till next time. Mahal